If you've ever ended a 10-hour workday feeling just completely exhausted, but also strangely unsatisfied with what you actually got done, this deep dive is for you.
Hmm.
We're really going after that profound mismatch between the sheer amount of effort you put in and the output you actually achieve.
It's the essential modern productivity problem, isn't it? We mistake being exhausted for being successful, and today we're tackling it through a concept the source material calls the woodcutter's paradox.
Right.
And our mission here is to move past the simple story and really extract three practical layers of wisdom that you can apply directly to your work. We want to help you see that critical difference between just being busy and being truly productive.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the whole thing starts with this story, right? The race of the two axes. We need to set the scene with the two main characters, Arjun and Vikram.
Yeah, and the setup is perfect because it starts on a completely level playing field. You've got two experienced woodcutters, Arjun and Vikram. They get hired to clear forests.
Equally strong, same job.
Exactly. Equally strong, equally eager, and they're handed identical brand new axes. Everything is the same.
But right away, their approaches they completely diverge.
Mm.
Arjun is the perfect embodiment of what we now call, grind culture.
Oh, absolutely. His strategy was all about relentless, visible effort. He was just defined by his commitment to time on task.
The source material says he started at dawn and just believed momentum was everything.
Yeah, it's very clear. He skipped lunch, he barely stopped for water, and he worked with what's described as a relentless, piston-like effort. I mean, if sweat was the only metric for success, Arjun was winning by a mile.
He was literally equating muscle fatigue with progress.
Exactly. And now you have to contrast that with Vikram. He starts at the same time, but every single hour, like clockwork, he just disappears for 15 minutes. Gone. Sits quietly under a tree, leans against a rock, seemingly just relaxing while Arjun is over there hammering away.
So to anyone watching, Arjun looks like the star employee. Vikram looks like he's slacking.
Right. But when sunset hits, the results are, well, they're not what you'd expect. Arjun is physically wrecked, he has blisters, he's cramping up, and he's only managed to clear half the area he was supposed to.
Only half. And Vikram?
Vikram looks, relatively fresh, and here's the real kicker. He's cleared twice as many trees as Arjun.
Wow. So Arjun, obviously frustrated, confronts him. He wants to know how Vikram, who took all these breaks, an hour and a half worth of breaks, managed to achieve, 4 times his output per hour?
And Vikram's reply is the anchor for this whole deep dive. He just gestures to his axe and says, while you were struggling with a dull edge, I was sitting under the tree sharpening mine.
That's it. So simple,
Mhm.
but the implications are just massive. It forces us to redefine what we even consider work.
It really does. It goes way beyond just taking a rest. We have to look under the surface of that story to see how it maps onto our modern, information-heavy lives.
Which brings us to the first level of wisdom here.
Yeah.
It deals directly with Arjun's fatal flaw. Here's where it gets really interesting. Level 1 is what we're calling the illusion of activity. It's that trap of confusing being busy with being productive. Arjun is the perfect symbol for that cultural lie that says visible exhaustion somehow validates your effort.
We've completely internalized this toxic idea that if we aren't constantly moving, we aren't working hard enough. It's especially bad in office settings where your value is sometimes measured by just being visible.
And the moment you're inactive, you feel this guilt.
Yeah, a kind of cultural shame.
And then you start self-medicating with low-value work. When you're exhausted and your focus is shot, you're not going to tackle your most complex tasks. You default to the easy stuff.
Answering emails.
Organizing files, scrolling social media, and calling it research. You're still swinging the axe, but, deep down the edge is completely dull.
And that's the hidden wisdom of level 1. Unfiltered, relentless effort will always hit a wall of diminishing returns. Always.
Always.
When your tool, your axe, or your brain is blunt, swinging harder only does one thing. It creates more friction. You just burn energy, get more tired, and destroy the effectiveness of your main tool.
People say don't work hard, work smart, but Arjun really believed that if he just kept going, sheer volume would win. The law of diminishing returns says the opposite.
Exactly. Once you're past your optimal point of focus, you're actively burning valuable energy that could have been used for sharpening.
Think about knowledge work. What's the equivalent of a dull axe?
It's a tired brain trying to process complex information. An hour spent reading financial reports when you're mentally fried might give you zero insight, but it still costs you an hour of energy.
So the task gets checked off, but the objective isn't met.
Precisely. You wasted that energy on a dull blade.
So it's not just about stopping the low-value activity. It's realizing that continuing it is actively hurting your potential later on, which brings us right to level 2.
Level 2 is where we shift from criticizing Arjun to learning from Vikram. We call it the definition of sharpening, because it's not just taking a break.
No, Vikram wasn't napping. He was performing strategic maintenance. For us, sharpening is an intentional action designed purely to increase your future effectiveness.
It's an investment, a 15-minute investment that promises a 4-hour return. And the source material is great here because it gives 3 distinct categories of sharpening for a modern professional.
Okay, let's dig into those. The first one is proactive learning, like spending 15 minutes reading a technical journal or learning a new keyboard shortcut. It seems so small.
It seems small, but the cumulative effect is massive. It's about consistently updating your skills. If your job is in spreadsheets and you learn a new formula, that might save you hours of boring data entry next month.
You've just made your swing 200% more efficient.
Right, with a tiny time investment. It's the difference between manually building a pivot table and knowing how to generate one instantly.
The second example is the one I find most interesting. The quiet reflection after a failed meeting or a project that went wrong.
Most people, with Arjun's mindset, they just want to jump straight to the next thing to forget about the failure.
It's emotional evasion.
Exactly. Sharpening in this case is having the courage to pause and ask, okay, what actually happened there? Where did we go wrong?
And without that analysis, you're just doomed to repeat the same dull method on the next project.
Reflection turns failure from just guilt into actionable data. You're turning that blunt experience into a finely honed understanding.
Okay, and the third type of sharpening is what the source calls cultivating perspective. This is the big one. It's powerful, but it's hard to do.
Perspective is the ability to zoom out so far that you realize the way you're working is fundamentally flawed. You see a completely different, easier way to get the job done.
It's not about swinging better. It's about realizing you don't even need to swing.
Yes.
Can you give us a concrete example of that? Because seeing a better way can sound a bit vague.
Sure. Imagine you spend 3 hours every week pulling data from 3 different systems to manually build a report in a spreadsheet.
A lot of people do that.
A lot of people do. Arjun's approach would be to try to do that reporting faster. More coffee, better formulas, whatever. Vikram's perspective sharpening moment is sitting under the tree and asking, why am I making this report in the first place? And then realizing that System A and System B can talk to each other through a simple API, which automates the entire report out of existence.
You've just eliminated the entire tree.
Exactly. And that insight, that perspective, it cannot be achieved while you are hammering away at data entry. It requires a calm, reflective mind.
Which leads perfectly into level 3. This addresses why taking that strategic pause is so hard for us culturally. Level 3 is the quiet advantage.
Right, because when Vikram was under that tree, he wasn't being praised for his brilliance.
He was being criticized.
He was criticized for doing nothing. And this is the social hurdle we all face. The most valuable work often looks exactly like no work at all.
Think about our professional culture. We reward visible effort. We measure output by time spent, by lines of code, by email sent. If you're sitting quietly, staring out a window, thinking about a core flaw in your company's strategy, that silence doesn't show up on a performance review.
We live in this surveillance culture where the quiet phase is constantly under scrutiny. But if you spend 30 minutes in deep thought and realize a project's direction is wrong, saving the company 6 weeks of wasted work, that 30 minutes is the highest value work of the month.
But if your boss walks by during those 30 minutes,
they assume you're slacking off.
So the challenge of the quiet advantage it's twofold. First, fighting your own internal guilt for not looking busy. And second, fighting the external pressure that demands motion over actual progress.
And that's why Vikram was so revolutionary. He understood the pause wasn't a timeout. It was a mandatory strategic intervention. He knew the effectiveness of his loud phase, the actual chopping, depended entirely on the quality of his quiet phase.
The planning, the reflection, the maintenance.
Exactly. The source even argues that for really high leverage tasks, the quiet work should take up most of the time. You spend 80% of your time planning and sharpening and only 20% executing with, surgical precision.
That completely flips conventional wisdom on its head. Most people spend 80% just doing and 20% reacting to problems.
Vikram's method eliminates wasted swings because the tool is always sharp and the angle is always right. It turns work from a battle of endurance into an exercise in pure efficiency.
So what does this all mean? We've gone from the story to the illusion of activity, to redefining sharpening as strategic learning, and finally, to embracing the quiet advantage of deep thought.
It means we have to synthesize this into a real philosophy. The woodcutter who stopped, who looked like he was slacking, was the better performer because he prioritized his tool over continuous deteriorating action.
And the critical question for you, listening, is, what are your own dull edges that are draining your effort right now?
Yeah. Is your dull edge just mental fatigue, meaning you need to actually schedule real breaks? Or is it a skill gap that 15 minutes of reading a day could fix? Or is it maybe a stubborn inability to reflect after you make a mistake?
The ultimate takeaway here, it seems to me, is that strategic learning isn't about adding more to your plate. It's a subtraction strategy.
A subtraction strategy based on friction.
Explain that.
Well, Arjun's focus was on increasing effort through sheer willpower. Vikram's focus was on reducing friction through maintenance. When your axe is sharp, there's low friction. You need minimal effort for maximum impact.
I see.
So when you invest in maintenance, whether it's learning something new or just quiet reflection, you are subtracting the friction caused by outdated knowledge, repeated mistakes, and a dull focus.
That shift from maximizing effort to minimizing friction, that is a complete game changer. It reframes quiet time not as a luxury, but as a critical, non-negotiable part of being effective.
It is the only way to avoid the burnout Arjun felt while still getting 4 times the results.
Absolutely. So as you move on from this deep dive, maybe take this final thought with you. It's about that social challenge of the quiet advantage. The challenge isn't just scheduling the break. It's communicating to your team or your boss, maybe more importantly to yourself, that the time you spend sitting quietly just thinking might actually be the highest value activity of your day. How are you going to defend that quiet advantage in your own life?